Alex was an energetic artist fueled by an unwavering passion for capturing the essence of the world through his sketches. Always accompanied by his well-worn sketchbook, he found comfort in the graceful movements of his pencil, a refuge from the chaos of life. Despite his popularity among his college peers, Alex remained an introvert, more at ease with his artistic pursuits than with socializing. While others clamored for his attention, few realized that his responses to their inquiries were often short, preferring the quietness of his own thoughts. His lonesome moments were sacred, especially when busy working on his sketches. He preferred that to be his time away from everyone. This went on until one day he was sitting by the lake with a few of his friends camping a short distance away from him, busy giggling to themselves that something strange happened. Ignoring their energetic chatter, Alex was concentrated on his half-finished drawing when one of the girls approached, drawn by curiosity. Upon glimpsing the sketch, she erupted in excitement, rallying the group to witness its progression. Their intrusion irritated Alex, prompting him to shield his work from prying eyes. Recognizing their overstep, his friends retreated, their expressions still beaming with happiness from what they saw. Left alone with his incomplete creation, Alex contemplated the scene before him, his frustration visible. Then, exactly at that moment, he received a text from an unknown number. "Never mind them, they are just being kids," the text said. Surprised, he scanned his surroundings, but found no source for the comforting words. In the center of the busy park, filled with others enjoying in similar lakeside outings, Alex thought of the mysterious sender, who had sparked his curiosity. Unnoticed by his friends, he rose to investigate, while half of the nearby crowd remained absorbed in their chatter and laughter. He assumed whoever sent the message was close by to see what had happened and is probably watching him at that moment. He then sat down and continued with his sketch. He had suddenly lost interest of it that he found himself staring at it yet not actually looking. When the time came, they all gathered their belongings and hurried home. The weekend break had concluded, signaling their return to classes. Alex sensed a shift in the atmosphere, an indefinable alteration in the very essence of the air he breathed. Although he couldn't quite pinpoint it, a subtle sense of change permeated his surroundings, hinting at forthcoming shifts. Whether good or bad, remained uncertain. Amidst casual chatter in the cafeteria, one of his friends Maisie animatedly discussed the arrival of a new student, stirring excitement amongst their group. This newcomer, indicated as remarkably handsome and an expert of poetry, sparked debates over his attraction, overshadowing Alex's own popularity among the college girls. Unfazed by the silly comments, Alex observed with a quiet smile, amused by the insignificant conversation. A few more girls sitting on the next table joined in on the discussion that it got loud, and suddenly silent as the attention shifted to two young men entering the cafeteria. Engrossed in their own conversation, the two men paid little attention to the surrounding commotion, prompting Alex to glance their way. Dismissing them with a shrug, he rose from his seat to remove himself from the lingering gossip. Alex got up and moved through the murmuring crowds until an unfamiliar voice broke through the chatter, calling his name. Alex Pope. Taken aback, Alex turned towards the voice, realizing he didn't recognize the caller. His group of friends, along with the entire cafe, fell silent, their attention drawn to the delivery person who stood amidst them, holding a bouquet of flowers. It was evident the delivery man was unsure of his recipient. Uncertain, Alex stepped forward, unsure of the situation. The delivery person approached him and offered the flowers. Accepting them reluctantly, Alex's friends erupted into cheers, together with everyone present. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, he hastily exited the cafeteria, seeking refuge on the rooftop where he could be alone. Resting on the concrete ledge, his legs dangling freely, he retrieved a card nestled among the flowers, intending to uncover the identity of the prankster. However, as he unfolded the card, its contents seemed to echo his own thoughts. "This is genuine. I like you," the card read. There was no signature written on the card, leaving the sender's identity a mystery. He shut his eyes, tuning into the noise rising from the streets below, where students were going about their young lives. Holding the bouquet of flowers in his lap, He remained seated, enjoying the sounds of youthful cheerfulness. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps disturbed his peace. He opened his eyes and turned to face the newcomer. To his surprise, it was a familiar face, one of the men who had entered the cafeteria during the conversation about the new student. Giving up on rooftop privacy, he rose from his seat and began to move past the newcomer towards the exit. But before he could escape, the newcomer reached out and held him by his arm, holding him in place. Alex stared at the intruder, his mind filled with confusion. Despite his attempts to break free, he found himself overpowered by the young man's strength. "I'm not here to disturb your private time," the newcomer informed, his voice calm. "I simply wish to have a conversation with you." A broad yet gentle voice said to his ear, causing Alex to tickle a bit. He moved his head away but did not try to break free and stared at the man standing too close to him. He let go of Alex and took a step back to give him space. This was Lucas, a reserved bookshop owner whose manner masked a world of emotions. Surrounded by the scent of old books and the whispers of forgotten tales, he sought comfort in the stories that lined his shelves, longing for a narrative of his own. Their paths had crossed one rainy afternoon when Alex stumbled into Lucas's contemporary bookshop seeking shelter from the storm. With raindrops clinging to his hair and a shy smile playing on his lips, Alex's presence illuminated the dimly lit space, drawing Lucas in like a moth to a flame. As they exchanged timid greetings, a spark ignited on Lucas, a silent admiration of looking as the pretty boy with an innocent face beaming at him in amusement. They never shared their names with each other. They simply had a conversation that left a huge impact on Lucas's impression on him. Their connection felt as though it had been forged over years, and their conversation flowed effortlessly, like water trickling through sand. He had also hoped he had left an impression on him, that he would come back to his shop one day for a reason different from escaping from rain, maybe to see him, but he didn't. He had no means of tracking him until he went to the local college to help register his cousin who had moved to live with him. He then did an investigation through his cousin to find out about him, which was not difficult since he was one of the popular kids. His whole life routine was on display for him to find. Lucas gestured Alex to sit with him on the concrete ledge. After they settled, he started. He confessed that he certainly knows Alex does not remember who he was. He was not there to remind him of who he was but to ask for a chance to start over, making a new impression on him. Alex just sat there in surprise that did not seem it will come to an end. He had never had someone declare their feeling to him head on like that. All the girls who had been bold enough to show interest in him usually will make a fuss for his attention, hang around him without valid reason, or tell their friends to tell him they were interested only to make him chase after them, which he never did. Never his love interest was a man. This was all new to him. He did not know what to say to all this, that he was direct about it to Lucas. Lucas admitted he was in no rush for a response. He only needed a chance to show him what he wanted from him. A relationship. Alex did not know how he felt about the situation, that he did not breath a word about it to his friends. The only thing suspicious around him regarding it were random deliveries through the new kid, Seal, dropping off anonymous messages and gifts. No one knew exactly whom these were from except the three of them. The last time they had met was when he invaded his privacy on the rooftop. Following that was a series of messages and treats from Lucas via his cousin, Seal, without a name. He will simply send either a card with a short flirty message, a box of treats, his favorite book, a ticket to Lucas' favorite spots like a theater or musical with a caption implying he wants him to know what makes him happy when he needs to distress. Not once had he asked for a meeting. This on its own was starting to get into Alex. 2 months had gone past with all the gifts and pampering still coming without fail. It was like Seal was instructed to give these to him when he was in a public space where he could not refuse them, as his friends were loving this silent torture of a secret admirer. They stopped bothering to ask whom it was from, and nicknamed the sender as the wife. On days he did not receive anything, they will be asking if he got dumped or divorced. They will also pose such questions on Seal when they walk past him in corridors. They knew it was not Seal, as he had gotten himself a girlfriend, which made this mystery person even more interesting. Eventually, Alex approached Seal while he was having lunch with his friend and asked to be connected to the sender. He was given a cell phone number. He saved it as the wife, as his friends nicknamed his love interest. He tried many times to call but couldn't. He would drop the call before it even rang. In all honesty, he did not know what he would say to him if he ever picks up on the other end. Was he starting to like this guy he has met only once because of a few gifts he couriered via his cousin? Was this curiosity rooted from the kind of gifts he received? He had received 2 books that were about healthy eating and career pursuits with art. Both motivational somehow. He even surprised himself by reading them both. Those were books he would not pick up from a bookshop should he be given a lot of money to spend buying books. Seeing that he cannot call the number, he went back to the source. Making Seal swear he will not tell Lucas he was asking about him. Sean gave vague answers, probing Alex to ask and get these answers from the horse's mouth. Defeated on this, he inquired where can he find him if he wanted to see him in person. He was given a bookshop where he worked. By chance, he was spotted by his friends talking to Seal, and they instantly knew what this was about. They joined the conversation, which was supposed to be private, and made it an open discussion. They openly revealed that a spark had ignited on their friend's heart, but if the wife knew what was best for their relationship, now will be the time to show up and reveal themselves and stop hiding behind trinkets they have been sending via Seal. Feeling embarrassed, Alex asked his friends to leave Seal alone before leaving the table they were sitting on. They stopped teasing and followed him to class. The gifts stopped coming for a week and he felt himself getting agitated. Even his friends could tell he was not himself, but they did not ask any questions as they were feeling the same. This new love interest has been something they were all looking forward to whenever they thought about school. It felt like they were all being wooed to love the wife, as he will be part of their friend's life. When Alex decided to pay the bookshop a visit, he invited his best friend Maisie to come along. He did not disclose why that specific bookstore. He only said he wanted to buy some sketching tools he could not find from his local shop. On arrival on the so-called bookshop, he felt familiarity of the space with no certainty on how, probably to buy something, but he couldn't recall the exact details. The store was one of the biggest in the city with branches around the country. It was a well-known franchise. But this branch was the smallest he has been amongst a few he had visited. They browsed through the aisles separately as Maisie was seeing some things he liked for herself and decided to do her own shopping. Alex got a chance to inquire from one of the employees about Lucas, only to find that he had not been to that branch for a few days in a row as he was overlooking a few branches all at once. He thanked them and went back to pretending he was shopping before buying a few items he could find from any bookshop and left feeling sad about the situation. He was disliking the attachment he was having with his situation. He was starting to wonder what had happened to him, that he has not been to work for days, aligning with his lack of usual flirting. He was disliking that this guy was invading his peace of mind without even lifting a finger. A day after, in the quiet corner of the security office, Lucas was looking at the security cameras to see who was looking for him, and was even happier that a child who was given a box of candy. He must have been doing something right to be honored by such a visit. He had been waiting for a phone call for days, but nothing happened. He wondered if Alex had recognized his number as the one that sent him a message while he was being irritated by his friends while sketching by the lake. Later that day, Alex received a greeting message from the wife that he took the whole day to respond, not knowing whether to dive into a million questions he had for him or simply act cool about the situation. Before he could answer, he received another one asking to meet after his classes. After that message, Alex was in a good mood, even offering to help his friends before they even asked for it. That raised a little question among them that they tried inquiring about such a merry mood. He dismissed the accusations going on about his day. When the time came, he received another message about a car waiting for him in front of his faculty building. Without saying a word, he bid his friends goodbye and got into the car. Before they could see who was behind the wheel, the car drove off, leaving them speechless. In the car, Alex got in and watched the faces of his friends through the side mirror as the car drove off before turning to talk to the driver. With a smile he was trying to conceal, Lucas greeted Alex without looking at him and looking straight on the road as they drove away from the university. They had a small talk on the short drive to one of the suburbs in the city. Lucas eventually parked the car on the driveway of one of the luxurious houses within the complex area. Alex was surprised they drove toward what was likely his home instead of a public place. As if reading his mind, Lucas explained that he figured Alex will not be comfortable to be seen in public alone with him. Lucas had tried to make his communication with him as anonymous as possible to ensure Alex was not feeling the pressure of unnecessary attention, while Lucas's pursuit might not give fruition at the end. Alex's heart skipped a beat on hearing the protection he had been getting without even realizing. For both the anonymity to the private conversation at Lucas's home. He was sure right then that he did not dislike this man. What he felt for him, he was still to discover himself. They were greeted by a housekeeper who welcomed Alex like he was a VIP. They got settled on a private lounge. Alex figured this as they had walked past the main lounge before coming to this one. It was fully equipped like it was a man cave for an adult who liked gaming. The couches they relaxed on looked expensive with a unique interior design that got Alex's approval, especially the artwork. They eventually addressed the elephant in the room. Lucas was still in plea for a chance and opportunity to win over Alex's heart and showing he will be the best decision in his life. He volunteered all the answers he thought and felt Alex had questions to about him. As suspected, Lucas owned all the bookstores around the country and was working on franchising the business as they were getting too much to maintain even with appointed managers. He was a younger sibling of two and a travel fanatic. He confessed to have met Alex a previous year at his store that Alex remembered the day. Their first planned date was comfortable for Alex considering he did not know this man. They had a meal prepared by a chef and played a few games Lucas had to teach Alex. They had bonded somehow that Alex was still reminiscing about it when the usual delivery came during lunch with a home-cooked meal. It turned out to be one of the favorite meals he had mentioned during their conversation. His friend started seeing change in their friend. He would sometimes be observed blushing when opening some gifts. They unanimously stopped teasing him about the sender but whisper among themselves making assumptions about who this secret admirer could be. No one among Seal's friends was a likely suspect and they never got a chance to see the driver. He was being strategic with his pickups. As time goes, Alex started approaching Lucas first and making phone calls only to have those silly conversation that goes nowhere when analyzed after the end of the call, but he was always looking forward to such. For Lucas's birthday celebration, he invited Alex to travel out of the city. Alex jumped on an opportunity to be alone with Lucas to see how he felt about him without any distraction. The trip was planned for 2 nights away. To Alex, it came and went like one deep breath. He enjoyed every single moment of it, except the sleeping arrangements. Lucas had booked a 2-bedroom suite. He couldn't even watch him sleeping in his sleep. He would have understood if he had booked a 1-bedroom suite with 2 beds. Not him sleeping a wall away from him. He did not say anything to him about it. He tried pretending he was okay with everything, and as the day's celebration plans took most of their time with perfectly planned itinerary, Alex will forget about his disappointments until they had to separate to go to sleep. He hated this perfect acts of gentleman Lucas was doing. He was hating the waiting game he was playing. He was getting impatient and frustrated at the same time. He knew he cannot complain about it as Lucas was doing everything in his power to woo him. He felt like he was on a leash of attachments heavy with his feelings. He couldn't imagine him liking someone else should he take too long to give him an answer. One other frustrating thing was that Lucas never asked for an answer to his request. Rather, he was busy taming his heart without a care. He had even forgotten about his sketches he always was drawing to avoid people. Without noticing, he had started hanging out with people without a need to be by himself and disconnect from the world. Not even his friends have noticed as it was happening gradually until it stopped. He was even a part of conversation with valid opinions to his crew. He eventually recruited his friends to his worries. Without revealing the identity of his love interest, he confessed his worries about his situation. Their opinions were split into 2. Some agreeing with how he felt as being played to confess on his own and some believing the wife was really being considerate of Alex as he has never really said how he felt but was simply on a fun ride for being spoiled endlessly without giving anything back. At the end of that discussion, he was stuck between confronting Lucas or wait for him to open an angle for him to say how he felt. The pampering and courier spoils never stopped. The change was that the gifts were now getting more intimately personal, like they were already dating. Alex had no objections to this. He was now getting invites to join Lucas on some sightseeing attractions or drive with his colleagues and their spouses, or simply a drive for just the two of them to some new restaurants that were getting a public hype at that time. Alex started noticing that other than holding hands for a split second when he was being led somewhere, or being helped getting out of the car, Lucas had never really made an attempt to get physical with him. He was a gentleman way too good gentlemanly for his patience. Like clockwork, the art of seduction continued. Alex realized he was losing focus on everything, including his classes, while he had his mind trafficked by a pair of blue eyes and curly hair. He was working on how to resolve this tiny problem that was even barely a problem. He decided to attack this head-on by sending a message request for a crucial conversation. But he couldn't. He felt he was giving himself up. He had pride, reeked of it. He convinced himself he will not let the tingling butterflies in his stomach and the silly smiles he will try with fail to dissipate, take over his sanity. His emotions were all over the place. He eventually opted for a simple, "Can I see you?" text. He sent that text message past midnight after turning and tossing in bed, trying to make up his mind. To his surprise, Lucas replied immediately, asking when. That just made matters worse because Alex was ill-prepared to confront him about his irrational feelings. He feared he will do or say something inappropriate. When no reply was received, Lucas himself tried calling him back twice, but there was no answer on the other end. The following days were going slow, as if they knew Alex was in distress. He still had not replied about the meeting date. He figured thinking too much about it did not make his situation better. Rather the opposite. He had stopped talking about it with his friends. Even when they directly probed about it, he will make an excuse. When he was sitting in their usual cafe with his friends after a long day of class attendance, Lucas, dressed casually, was walking with Seal towards the cafe. They were seen through the cafe's glass windows walking round towards the entrance. Alex was frantic. He reassured himself that Lucas was too respectful to approach him boldly. He couldn't just walk up to him like that. It was inconceivable. Overwhelmed, he pulled his hoodie over his head and continuously sipped on his drink until it was drained empty, the sound of the straw slurping echoing. Feeling embarrassed, he set the cup down and closed his eyes, taking deep breaths to regain composure. He silently prayed for invisibility, hoping Lucas would be seated at a distant table with his cousin, as they were last time. Yet, to his dismay, Lucas called out his name. Alex glanced nervously at Lucas, offering a hesitant smile. His friends exchanged questioning looks, silently signaling for an introduction, but Alex disregarded their cues. Instead, he stood up, his gaze fixed on Lucas. Without a word or gesture, he grabbed his backpack and motioned for Lucas to follow him, hurriedly making his way toward the exit. Lucas bid farewell to Seal and Alex's friends before leaving himself. Seal was left to field a barrage of questions from the group of friends. He simply explained that Lucas had asked him to bring Alex to him and claimed ignorance beyond that. When pressed about Lucas's identity, Seal vaguely mentioned that he was a distant cousin and left it at that. Alex proceeded towards their unknown destination, his nerves wreaking havoc on him. With each step, he consciously took deep breaths in an effort to calm himself. The presence of this man seemed to render his mind blank. Though he had much to express, the words eluded him. He hadn't realized that his affection for this man ran deeper than he let on. He was hoping this insanity of the situation is a phase. It will subside eventually. Lucas evoked emotions within him that defied description, weaving together into a complex web of vulnerability. Despite his attempts to steady himself with deep breaths, they proved insufficient. Suddenly, Lucas reached out and grasped his hand, startling Alex out of his daydream. He hadn't realized Lucas was so close behind him. His cheeks burned with embarrassment, making it difficult to meet Lucas's gaze. Silently, Lucas guided him towards his parked car, and they drove off in a silent journey, the only sound being a podcast playing from Lucas's phone via Bluetooth. Alex, lost in his thoughts, barely registered the podcast's content as he rehearsed what he wanted to say to Lucas when the time came. He silently appreciated Lucas's decision not to initiate conversation, buying him time. When the car finally came to a stop, They found themselves in an unfamiliar yet beautiful backyard, a place Alex couldn't recognize. He refrained from asking questions. His focus was consumed by more pressing matters than their whereabouts. Without waiting for Lucas to switch off the engine, Alex exited the car and walked to lean against its front hood, waiting in the gathering darkness. It was evident that they had been driving for hours, considering the time it will take for darkness to come after attending classes daily. Alex couldn't recall anything they had passed along the way. His mind was preoccupied with crafting and discarding words to say to Lucas. Despite his efforts, he felt no closer to articulating his thoughts. The frustration increased as he realized his speech, or whatever it is he intended to say, remained a mess in his head. While his mind pleaded for relief from the burden, his heart stubbornly persisted in its desires. Eventually, Lucas joined him, and they stood together in silence. Surprisingly, it was a comfortable silence. As darkness gradually fell upon them, the faint lights of the night began to appear brighter against the deepening night sky. The atmosphere around Alex only added to the challenge he faced. It felt like the setting of a romantic scenario, a situation that wasn't surprising given Lucas's determined efforts to foster love between them. Alex was undeniably in love, so deeply smitten that he felt compelled to share his newfound emotions with everyone he encountered. However, a persistent lump in his throat hindered him from discussing his feelings with the object of his affection. Despite knowing exactly what he wanted to convey, he found himself lacking the words to do so. Observing Alex's reluctance to open up, Lucas stepped forward to stand directly in front of him. Yet, even as Lucas was standing there watching him, Alex couldn't bring himself to meet his gaze. Patiently, like the understanding man he was, Lucas waited. Alex could sense Lucas smiling at him, a familiar comfort. Finally, Lucas took the final step, closing the distance between them by spreading his legs around Alex's, who remained partially seated on the car hood. With a gentle touch, Lucas lifted Alex's chin, urging him to look up at him. Alex felt like he was floating. Despite the dim lighting, he could still see Lucas's features clearly. He studied them, finding himself drawn to each detail. The piercing blue eyes, the long lashes, the thick and neatly groomed eyebrows, the flawless and velvety skin, the tender and moist lips. His heart skipped a beat when he realized he was being observed while scrutinizing Lucas's features. Hastily, he recoiled, but Lucas followed him, leaning closer persistently. Unable to retreat any further, Alex leaned back until he nearly grazed his head on the car hood. Lucas slid his hand beneath Alex's head and gently guided it back to him, the movement unfolding in slow motion. They locked eyes, barely a breath's distance apart. To Alex, the moment seemed to stretch into eternity. Finally, breaking the silence, Lucas spoke. "When it comes to you, I strive to maintain a sense of chivalry, even if it's a struggle. Patience isn't exactly my strong suit, but losing you over it is not an option. Acting as if I'm content without seeing you is detrimental to my mental well-being. Putting on a brave face while you ignore my calls and texts is perhaps the hardest thing I've had to endure. You can't fathom how many times I've driven to places you were likely to be just to catch a glimpse of you, effortlessly exuding happiness while I was in agony for your company. You have no idea how many times I've restrained myself from touching and hold you tight in my chest because you gave me a look I couldn't interpret. I know this is all new to you, but I'm struggling here. If your heart does not beat faster on seeing my name on your screen when I call, do not make haste on your decision. Some things take time. Time is all I have for you. If your mind does not wander on not hearing from me for days, do not falter. I'll always have you in my heart. While I would like to talk more about this, I should ask, will it be okay if I kiss you?" Alex opened his mouth to say something, but his mind was blank. It didn't help that he was breathing on the scent of his aftershave, the scent that made him feel funny and tingly all over his body. Lucas then closed the gap between them. He kissed him. He simply caressed Alex's lips with his and held on to them for a short while before he stopped but did not pull back as he watched Alex, whose heart was beating so loud he was convinced Lucas can hear it. He didn't break the eye contact as he was waiting for Alex to say something or protest. But he didn't. When Lucas slowly pulled back, Alex subconsciously took in a sharp breath like he was going to say something to protest that Lucas stopped moving, and waited. Nothing. Lucas came back with all his being. He kissed him senseless, parted his lips with his and devour on them. While kissing, he pulled him away from the car by his waist and squeezed him closer to him. Alex did not hold back. They indulged on the kiss too long that Alex was feeling his knees get weaker as his other senses get stronger. Without a warning, a quiet moan slipped out of Alex's lips, leading Lucas to abruptly break the kiss, breathing heavy and pulled away, but did not let go of him. They were both panting. He rested his forehead on Alex's while holding his face with both his hands, while trying to control his breathing. Lucas then said, "I think now is a good time to have that talk."